Welcome to AI at Work. I'm Elijah Sauce. I'm a serial entrepreneur with 28 years of experience in tech, and today I run an agency that builds AI solutions.
Hey, I'm Kevin Williams. I spend most of my time helping companies figure out how to actually use AI. Not in theory, but in the work itself.
What's up, Kevin?
Hey, how's it going this morning?
It's going okay. Just the usual hectic morning of running around the kids to school and all that stuff. And yeah, and then I love opening up the Google document that we have to just keep track of all of our ideas all week. And by all week, I mean 30 minutes before we actually record, there's all the new notes. That's just how it works, right?
Yeah, I helpfully marked all of the things that you're supposed to say in orange. Just, so lest you think that Eli is just super clever, I'm actually scripting him as if he's my own sock puppet robot.
Totally. Now this is your cue to ask me about this. You know what I think's even better is we could just go through our text thread from the week, and that's the notes. Like we could just talk about you struggling with Sora, and that could be the whole show. What were you trying to do again with Sora? Like what awful thing were you trying to make it do that it refused to do?
Well, the thing that actually, this happened after our recording last week. I just got kind of obsessed with this idea of teleoperated humanoid robots and just sort of the bizarre circumstances.
As one does.
As one does, on a Tuesday afternoon. And just sort of the bizarre circumstance of the fact that you're going to have these like offshore and onshore teams that are controlling these things, doing the most mundane things in people's houses. But people are weird, and that they're going to ask these robots to like do things that maybe are a little bit kooky. And there's going to be like some middle-aged guy in, let's just say, the Philippines who's operating this thing. And I had to visualize that with Sora at one point this week.
Okay, wait a minute. Translate that into the visualization with Sora. What does that mean? What were you trying to get Sora to do?
I was trying. I created a quick Sora video that had two humanoids having this really bucolic home scene where they were hugging each other, and then it zoomed out, and there were two guys with big mustaches who sort of looked at each other and then shrugged and were like,
with VR headsets on.
It was with VR headsets.
I showed it to some people. It was good.
It is the only thing that I've actually posted on Sora. So by all means, follow me at Ascend Labs, and you too can see my one Sora post.
Have you spent quite a bit of time on Sora? What are your feelings about it?
Oh, I think it's amazing. I'm not a big social media tool person, but the cameo feature where it takes your own face, or it can take like your pet or whatever it is and put them into a superhero costume is just fun. There's a little bit of uncanny valley, but it's really, really good.
It's really good. It looks real.
However,
it looks so much more real than the other stuff that to date.
And there's such continuity in it. It is only like 10 seconds long, but my own use, and I've probably created 100 Sora videos, of like Hang's Head in Shame type thing, is that I download them and really share them with my family. My teenagers are just completely disgusted with me at this point because I keep sending them like cheesy dad type Sora videos.
I've intentionally tried to stay off of it. I think that the people who always say, oh, I know the tricks that you're playing on me, end up being the ones most susceptible to those tricks. And I think with all of the dirty social media algorithms, I'm one of those people, I know exactly what you're doing to me. And now I'm just going to scroll through TikTok for the next 4 hours of my life, knowing exactly what you're doing to my brain and how you're rotting it. And with Sora, basically layering on all of that evil short form, I'm just going to hijack your attention for hours and hours type thing, with the shock and awe of AI and how real it looks and the novelty, man, it just gets in my brain. I really have intentionally just tried to stay away from it because I will just watch hours of AI slop like it ain't nobody's business. I'll just keep on going down that path.
I'll admit I'm pretty resilient. I will scroll a little bit, but there are only so many times you can watch the Queen of England like doing a rap or eating Jamaican jerk chicken.
You're just not following enough people.
Something like that. Well, I'm not using it as a social network. I'm actually just playing with the thing. And from that perspective, it's fun.
Yeah, it is. It is so fun with the kids. And I wonder when the novelty of this is going to wear off. I'm like, that's cool, another AI gen video. But so last night we have this Bengal cat that the family loves, and it looks like a mini leopard. You've seen this little kitty. Kids absolutely love it, and it may or may not kill lots of birds, even when confined to the backyard. It's just a little hunter. And I'm like, oh, that'd be funny to make a Sora video of Neo taking down like a bald eagle that gets too close to the backyard or something. And so I gen it, and it looks so good. And the kids are just cracking up, and it looks amazing. And he also does this thing where he'll camp out around our house, wait for me to come by or anybody to come by, and then just attack them like a wildcat, but in a nice way, not in a I'm going to maul you kind of way, but with his claws retracted, batting at your legs. And I said, oh, that'd be such a good one if I came home and then the cat came and jumped on me, but it knocked me over this time. And so I put the prompt into Sora. But this time, instead of Bengal cat, it just assumed I was talking about a Bengal tiger. And so I gen the video, the kids are waiting, and I walk in the door and it looks so real. And then this tiger just attacks me and starts mauling me, and my daughter is freaking out. The dark side of generative AI videos.
I don't know. You went pretty quickly from I couldn't possibly use it to I'm making cat videos with it.
This is why, Kevin. This is why it's a slippery slope. It's either I'm all on the gas pedal or I don't touch it, and so that's why why I stay off Reels and TikTok. And when Sora was introduced, the light bulb went off in my head. I know
At
where
this point,
is going.
I think that most people have seen it, but if you haven't, you really do need to see it. It lends itself into all kinds of larger questions about sort of our perception of media and just how good it's getting. And
So good.
we'll say this almost every week. This is the worst it's ever going to be. And this is astonishing already. When you just roll back the clock by a couple of years and see what the early video generators look like versus this, I'm sure it can be a little bit frustrating now and again, but wow, it is super cool from a tech perspective. And no wonder Hollywood's worried.
Oh, for sure. It's funny too, because showing this to a 5-year-old and what her experience with tech at large has been, or her expectations, after I give it the prompt and she's waiting on the edge of her seat to see what this video looks like, it's like, isn't it done? Isn't it done? Where is it? Where's the video? And my wife's in the room too, looking at this whole thing unfold. And I'm trying to explain how many hundreds of hours it would have taken some person with a camera and a video editor and a special effects person to make this tiny little clip that we're waiting a full maybe 2 minutes for it to generate. And yeah, it just went right over her head. She doesn't know, she doesn't care. So it's so crazy to think about just the perspective and the expectations of these generations that are coming up that are going to be AI first generations, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's the boiling frog phenomenon. Like here we are, we're even you and I, we're living it. And it's a far cry from those early days with GPT 3.5 and how neat it was and how it can write a sonnet to why aren't you outputting my 80-page document immediately?
Totally. I mean, we've had this conversation, and the number of angry comments I've shouted into my microphone at these different models when it doesn't give me exactly what I want on the first prompt. And I don't know if this is true, but you're like, oh, I'm going to be very nice to my future robot overlords. I will never curse at them or yell at them. Maybe I have some anger management issues, but yeah, I've already come into that. I expect you to do exactly what I said the first time, and we're just not there yet.
It is listening. It definitely is. I don't know if you have the new generation of Alexa in your household, but it now will make opinions about like your antacid that you've added to your shopping list. Hope you feel better, Kevin. I'm like, no, that just got filed away into Amazon somewhere.
Boy, this is going to be a whole episode because I've been going down the home automation rabbit hole, and everybody is in that in-between stage right now where it's a partial rollout, or, oh, you can have this part of Gemini for Google Assistant, but not this part yet, but this is where you can sign up for early access. And so it's all in this weird Either it's the super old school, you need to know the exact phrase that you put into your automation in order to make your lights go on and off in the right room, or you have these half integrated generative AI models in there. So none of it is working well right now. I've almost had to just give up and put the whole thing on pause. I really do want to do a home automation thing with AI at some point.
I have to laugh a little bit because I have various home automation hubs and boxes. I was doing like some cleanup over the weekend and I was like, wow, I have all of these smart outlets and all of these things. I had ambition to like do all of these automations and just sort of threw up my hands. And at this point, it's sort of knowing that over the hill, I'm not quite sure how far over the hill, we're going to have more orchestration layers to a lot of this. It's going to start to sort of normalize those things. You might be using some janky Chinese like switch, which would totally be my MO, and it's almost impossible to use.
Is a big one that's really
Casa. I have some Casa. I have some other stuff that's around. Yes, but at the end of the day, that's a standard, right? So the switch is using a standard, and even if the standard is a little bit janky, an AI system can map to it such that you should pretty soon, I mean, I imagine this is going to be a feature in Alexa or Google Home, you should be able to say, hey, find that random device that is on my network and let's talk through how I want to set it up, as opposed to the app.
Downloading the third-party app and enabling the skill, and it's
all of these things.
Right now.
And I mean, some of it might turn out to be garbage, but I really think that just idea of orchestration is going to creep up on us in a lot of different ways that people aren't necessarily thinking about. And my whole thing about auditory communication is also going to play in. These things are so finicky to, as you were saying, download the app, configure this, whatever it is. But if you could verbally troubleshoot your way through, the experience just gets so much better for everyone. And that's just on the consumer front. Think of how much like industrial machinery and things like that are out there, that if you could basically have a conversation with it as far as calibration, everything just gets easier and better. So there are good things heading our way in that respect for sure.
And you're just talking about setup, right? Then there's the actual day-to-day use where if you don't remember the specific command with Google Home or Alexa, you just got to keep guessing, wait, were those called the lower floor lights or the basement lights? And if you don't get the name right, it just says, sorry, I can't help you with that, or I don't know what you're talking about. With generative AI powering this, you could just say that, hey, it's kind of dark in the basement, and it'll turn on the lights. That's the way it's working or promised to work right now. And you can do this with the open source Home Assistant platform, and you can power it with GPT-5, for example. But it requires running a little server in your house and all sorts of things most people who aren't complete nerds like me won't do. Last count, I had 85 IP-enabled devices in my house that are running on this automation network. So making the change is a big lift. And that's why I'm sitting it out right now. I started to play with some stuff over the weekend and then realized where this was going, kind of the direction of Sora, where this is just going to consume my life. So I had to stop.
So there's going to be at least one person in our audience who's going to be like, hey, I'd love to just sit in front of your house and see if I can mess with your lights with like 80 different IP addresses. I'm sure you have that fully locked down from a security perspective.
I actually really do. I really do have it fully locked down.
Most consumers won't.
No. What's your Wi-Fi password? Password
1.
Well, speaking of this conversational AI, also wanted to thank you for a good recommendation. And this one is, have you ever seen the Midwit meme? Do you know what that is? The Midwit? Okay. So it's these three guys. And on the left, you have the dunce, the novice, the guy who just doesn't really know what he's doing. He's going to look for the simplest solution. In the middle, you have the guy who is just going to overcomplicate the crap out of the entire process, try to optimize it to the ninth, on and on and on. And then on the far right, you have the guy that looks like the one on the far left, but he's the Jedi. He's the total master who just has this whole thing nailed, and he's the best of the best, but he's doing the same thing as the novice, right? So that's the Midwit meme, is the Midwit is the one who gets caught up in the complexity. This is a really good meme to know as we kind of go on this episode and talk about agents and automation workflows, because you can definitely fall into the Midwit meme. But our last episode, we were talking about this conversational AI and how one of my biggest complaints was if I'm not at my home setup with all my fancy stuff and monitors and microphone and maybe in a noisy coffee shop, I find myself either crouched down onto my laptop microphone trying to whisper into it, or using one of these wireless earbuds that pick up the noise of the entire cafe or airplane or wherever I am, and it just doesn't work. Also, when you go wireless, there's this awful latency where it ends up missing the first 5 words that you say. Then you have to go back and type it in. Point being is, if you listen to the last episode, when you get used to a 400% increase in your data input into your machine, it's really tough to go back. It's really tough to go back. So I was telling you, Kevin, about how, I've got the one AirPod I'm putting in my mouth trying to talk, but it's not really working. And on my last business trip, I tried bringing my fancy wireless microphone with a receiver that plugs in. The latency was awful. And you said, why don't you just get a pair of those cheap Apple wired earphones that have the microphone that you can just hold up and talk into? And they're like $16 on Amazon. And I thought, that's kind of a pretty good idea. They came yesterday. I went to a coffee shop. Dude, it worked amazing. It was perfect. I was like, it was such a perfect, like, this is the Midwit meme, right? Like, sometimes you just get the old janky version of the thing that you know it works and it's super solid. And yeah, I've had some workflow automations and agents that have done the same thing.
I think you just called me a midwit, but
I was a midwit. I was the one with the 7 wireless microphones trying to find this perfect setup. And you said, why don't you just buy the ones that have been out for like 20 years and use those? I'm like, oh, yeah, that works. Yeah.
A quick reminder that we called out Whisper Flow on the last couple of episodes. Super Whisper is another one that helps amplify how you're interacting with anything just by adding LLM transcription. And it's still just one of my favorite tools for sure.
Every day.
Yep. No affiliation, by the way. There's no affiliation. It's just, big hug to cool technology.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of big cool technology, we made a promise to disclose a favorite workflow automation or agent, or probably a good place to start. What the hell is the difference, Kevin? These words get thrown around all the time, and kind of like AGI or superintelligence, everybody seems to have their own definition. So how would you separate out an agent or agentic AI from a automation or a workflow automation?
So you let marketers get their hands on anything and it gets really, really complicated in a hurry. And I would say that a lot of people have been talking about agents, like 2025 being the year of the agent, but you're right. Like, what the heck is an agent? And there are a lot of different definitions out there, and that definition is going to slide over time. But the way that I think about it is that an agent is something that executes a task in some way, shape, or form. You basically put your hypothetical dime in on the left side, and on the right side, something cool and perhaps useful pops out. And it will accomplish that through perhaps really a bunch of complicated means. But at the end of the day, that's what you're after, is an input and an output that might be part of a larger process. Okay, well, how's that different from a workflow? People like us have been doing stuff in Zapier and Make for like a decade that essentially, I want to move this file from here to there and like run some code on it or whatever it is. I'm putting my coin in on the left and I'm getting something out on the right. The difference, what we have now, is agents add an LLM layer that can have decision making in the middle of it somewhere. So it's transforming that data in a way that's often much lighter weight than it would have been in previous generations, such that you can be much, much, much more dynamic with the output on the other side. And then you have to think of it in terms of agents playing a role in multi-agent workflows at the end of the day. So what we were talking about just a few minutes ago, as far as the switching, what's still missing is this orchestration layer of an agent that understands all of the agents, such it knows which is the right one to use in what circumstance. Oh, they need something off of LinkedIn, so I need to use the agent that knows how to go into LinkedIn and get my direct messages. Oh, it needs the agent that is going to create a RAG database that stores a bunch of documents. I need to call that one instead. Instead, at the moment, we're still basically duct taping things together in workflow software. And Zapier and Make are still solid options, but as we've mentioned before, at least my go-to here as a non-coder, and that's important to note, is N8N, because I can create these individual agent flows and then stitch them together as far as a larger, essentially self-orchestrated layer such that I can accomplish whatever it is that I'm after. That orchestration layer is happening. It's well known that that's what people are after. But when people say agent, generally, from a functional perspective, they're talking about these AI augmented workflows.
Yeah, so it might even be fair to say that these automation workflows that have been around forever and ever are working on sets of conditional logic. If this happens, then do this. But if this happens, then do this. And so kind of like N8N and a lot of these other very popular building platforms, you do get this visual interface of what these different nodes look like, and that part's familiar. You have this visual workflow where you see these branches of if these different things could happen. But do you think it's fair to say that the real difference between these automation workflows as we've known them with things like Zapier, depending on how you like to pronounce it, would be that instead of just conditional logic, you have this fuzzy logic that is being powered by an LLM. It's almost as if an LLM was interjected into the workflow automation, and it's now making decisions on the fly that the older automations couldn't make before. Is that really the difference between an agent and an automation? Is just the interjection of an LLM somewhere in that process?
I'm going to quibble just a little bit in that I think that you're not wrong at all, but it's almost the simplification of it and the accessibility of it that makes it deployable right now. Pretty much everything we've described could have been done through more traditional development previously, but because it was development, it was a whole deal to do things, as opposed to almost having a conversational layer to it that it rounds off the edges, the same way we were talking about the switches. And that allows you to deploy these things a lot faster. You're not wrong, because the applied technology is taking the place of all of that code. But for our listeners, knowing that these things are so much more accessible because they're buildable by AI and they have an AI step in it that just makes it so much easier to use, it opens up this huge world of possibility of things that previously would have just been like, why bother? Like I've got, so-and-so on my staff that deals with this horrible thing, and that's why we pay him the big bucks to deal with this horrible thing. And now you can totally reassess that in a way that you don't have to call on a dev group to solve.
I think that's a really important point, is the fact that previously, let's use Zapier as an example, you could set up all these visual nodes and build out your workflow automation. But with many of these other platforms like N8N or Lindy, you can just put in a prompt of the thing that you're trying to accomplish, and then the platform builds it for you, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. We'll get into that. But that is a huge differentiator right there, just like we were talking with that home automation. The big unlock will be when you can just describe what it is that you want done without having to either learn about the code or learn about that platform-specific interface and how to use it. You can just describe what it is you want, and it should just build it. Like that is the holy grail, right? That's where so much of this is heading. That's going to be an unlock for anybody who isn't a developer, but wants all the cool tools that developers can build at their whim.
No, absolutely. And we're close. N8N has its AI workflow builder, which works reasonably well.
You pay a premium for it. must be pretty good, right?
Well, yeah, it works well. It really does work well. It's not seamless though. So we're getting closer. And then we mentioned Claude skills last time. Installing a Claude skill into Claude, which probably we should attach that to this episode as well, such that folks can download the Claude skill. You can develop flows that way. This is what I want to accomplish. This is the coin I'm putting in at the front end, and this is what I want out the back end. Because I don't want anybody to lose track of the importance of scope and understanding what you're trying to do. Because if you have a poor grasp of what's going in and what's coming out, guess what? You're going to get bad stuff out from bad stuff in, garbage out at the end of the day, and you're probably going to be frustrated. So there is some education and some acclimatization to how the technologies work. And there's also just some experience needed in how to define scope. So you can't lose track of that. You'll have better results if you think harder about what you're trying to accomplish, at least in those 2 points. Let the system figure out some of the hows in between, and then but focus on what it's supposed to look like in the output.
Well, you mentioned Zapier 2 being one of these more old school workflow automation tools that have been around forever. And even these legacy platforms are adding in the ability to hook up different models to the workflows, right? So it then becomes a matter very often of the more you're willing to pay for the subscription, the easier it is going to be to get off the ground and get something going, right? And so you mentioning that you're not super technical, but N8N is your platform of choice. They've done a lot of things on that product iteration to make it a lot more user-friendly and let people get started faster. Whereas before, a lot of people would open that and they take one look at the menu, they try to hook up just one of these tools. It doesn't work the first time. They shrug their shoulders. They're like, this is way too much. And it has gotten so much better. Tend to go an inch deep on 20 of these tools because I just want to try something and experience them. And then I circle back and say, okay, this is the poison I'm going to pick. I'm going to go all in on this because as we talk about building these different workflows or these different agents, whatever you want to do or whatever you want to call it at that point, if you're in a fragmented ecosystem and you are running a business or you're running a division in a business, it does start to become a little complex if something goes wrong, if you have to edit something. Wait, which one was that on? You better have good SOPs, good documentation to go back to, because the more spread out it is, and we've talked about this before, Kevin, it's better to pick a platform and really get good at that platform than to do what I do as a techno nerd and pick all of them. Try one thing, although I do eventually go back. And so you've landed on N8N as your pick.
Oh, 100%. And it has a couple of different reasons. And boy, there are some major business implications for this as far as the ecosystem. First is just from a cost perspective, as currently configured, it's impossible to beat. That you can self-host it and you're basically paying for process as opposed to paying for actions. And that's essentially broken the workflow SaaS pricing model because Zapier or Make would charge you per interaction. And yes, there is that model in place in N8N, but if you want to self-host it and do a gazillion different processes, you can, and just pay for that process as opposed to paying for the interactions. So it's
break that down a little bit, that interaction, just so people understand, like just break that down a little bit, that interaction. When you're paying for that interaction, like what exactly does that mean? What are you being charged for?
So generally, if there's a trigger response that something happens in your email, that's your coin in, and something happens on the other side, as in you've moved the file to Google Drive, whatever it is, that interaction is charging you, you get a certain quota a month. It's usually a few thousand in the basic accounts, and it goes up from there. But if you're doing anything at any sort of scale, say you're a D2C company and you have tens of thousands of orders a month and you're trying to do something clever with it, you'll tap that out in a huge hurry. So
It's important to point out even your own inbox, right?
even
How
your
many
own
emails
inbox.
do you get a day, right? If you have
Mhm.
some automation that's looking at every email that comes in and you're burning through one of those credits or one of those tokens every time, that adds up faster than you can imagine, right? So you'll be out of space, or like the old days of cell phones, when you'd get over the amount of minutes that you were allotted, all of a sudden you're getting this exponential upcharge as well. It can get expensive really fast.
So the other piece is the shareability and the portability of this stuff. And you and I talk about this a lot, that we build all of these cool things. And because at the end of the day, a workflow is essentially JSON, the ability to download it and share it in a frictionless environment is incredibly powerful. Think about if you, being the dev, had developed a cool app that does X, Y, and Z as far as like lead enrichment or whatever. And yeah, you might be able to give your buddy Kevin a login or something to it. But if you wanted to give it to me in a way that I was going to deploy it, all of a sudden I'm going to be spinning up Vercel, and I'm going to be like trying to figure out how to host this thing, and I'm just going to throw up my hands. But it's literally click, click, click simple to take somebody else's workflow and upload it into N8N. And then, yeah, you have to connect the endpoints because they had it connected to their email and you need it connected to your email. They had it connected to Salesforce and you need it connected to HubSpot. So there's some sort of adapting that you have to do around the edge. But this is going to be a giant unlock, particularly in the SMB community, where, you know, founders and leaders are going to be like, "Hey, yeah, cool. I knocked together this fun little thing. It solved a bunch of my problems. Here you go, bud." And off you go to the races, because I'm not really in the SaaS game. That's not the thing that I'm too interested in. I'm interested in solving problems. And the sorts of stuff that both of us have sort of built casually in the last couple of months, or 3-4 months, and we'll describe some of that going forward. These would have been full-fledged SaaS companies just a few years ago. And we're like, meh. Why would I do that? Selling SaaS is really hard. And since this wasn't very hard for me to build, why on earth would I invest all the time and dollars into trying to build some sort of brand around this thing? And that might be wrong. And there are plenty of people out there that are taking these workflows and they're putting a fancy logo on them and they're getting out there because they have some sort of a distribution channel. And you know, they're gonna get, you know, $50 a month for 6 months until like people realize, oh wow, you could have just downloaded the JSON.
I would say probably 90% of the 20-something kids that you see on TikTok and Instagram who are the new AI experts, who have the clickbait thumbnail on their video that says, "Here's how you can make $1 million using AI starting your own business this year." I'd say 90% of it is basically this thought of reselling N8N workflows that they didn't build to begin with, that they probably just got on the internet as a JSON file that they imported in and then are trying to resell them as a business. I don't think that business model really works. I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe we're in the wrong business, Kevin.
Well, I mean, you can say the same about websites. Circa 2001 to 2025. There are a lot of people out there that make a very solid living. In fact, you at various times have made a very solid living off of doing this, which is configuring and customizing essentially a website. There are parts of that you're going to have to hard code, and there are parts of it that you're going to be using like off the shelf sort of WYSIWYG software. So I don't begrudge this at all. And frankly, I think it's a huge opportunity.
Service versus product though, right?
Yeah, service versus product, that you're
like reselling prompts or JSON files for N8N workflows versus I'm going to help you solve this problem and these are the tools I'm going to use. Very different. I think a lot of the TikTok stars that are AI experts, a little more of the latter, a little more of the, you know, trying to resell basic stuff without a fundamental knowledge of it. But who knows? Who knows?
There are also rights issues and commons issues and like all of these things that are surrounding it. But hustlers are going to hustle. Yeah, that's the way of it. And as a result, in their wake, people are creating just amazing things that are just out there and you can grab them. You need some sort of a vector RAG system that's ingesting documents. Okay, click, 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 find 10 of them, find one that's going to work for you and adapt it to your purposes. Like this, it's a remarkable era of being able to just cycle skip and get the right pieces. And, internally we're building these things that the other day it was something like, oh, we don't really know how to figure out the cost for this because of, we're accessing this model and that model and the other one. So we built a token counter of how much is this going to cost us to run. And now we have the token counter. So if we need that for something else, we just add it to whatever project, and then it creates just a simple, I think it's a G sheet, and just calculates what's the estimated cost per run, such that how much your fun little tool is burning in terms of cost and resources.
That's so cool. I mean, that would have been a relatively complex piece of software you would have had to build just a couple of years ago that you can now no code, slap together, find somebody who's already done it, which is even better, import that JSON file in, and you are up and running. I mean, that's worth mentioning is that some of these N8N workflows can be incredibly complex. You're looking at this labyrinth of conditional logic and all these nodes and connecting lines. I mean, even though it's amazing that you can do it without code and you can have this drag and drop interface to put all this stuff together, it doesn't mean that it doesn't take time. So to have that unlock of being able to just import a code file in there, have it all built, and then you had mentioned putting in the connectors, and I want to talk about that. That is just such a huge unlock. So these connectors, okay, I want to say the first time I used N8N and I was benchmarking it against some of these other automation or agent tools, Lindy is one of them. The connectors in Lindy were so seamless, right? They had these templates to get you started. I think one of these templates turned into a better version of something you built on N8N. And we're probably going to be talking about this. But I remember the connectors were so simple. And then I thought, I'm going to go over to N8N and I'm going to replicate this same thing that was a template in Lindy and try to get it set up from scratch, putting the nodes together and the connectors in N8N. And I had an awful time with the connections. They just didn't hook up as seamlessly as they did in Lindy. And we've both been playing with these for a long time. So have you seen or have you had trouble with the connectors specific to N8N, or have you seen an improvement over time as to how seamless they are to get going?
Definitely improvement over time. In 24, we basically threw up our hands and we're like, this is tough to do right now. And now they're adding who knows how many hundreds of connectors a day, a week, or whatever that are seamless. And we're not getting technical here, but the ability to do basically anything you can imagine through a webhook. Like if it has an online implication, you can use a webhook to grab the information and do something with it. It is more advanced, but you can get around some of those limitations. Certain platforms are more locked down than others as far as their native connection functionality. So again, beginner, intermediate, advanced. In the intermediate advanced territory, APIs are still a thing. So an API is making a data call to another platform, and you can usually do a lot more with an API, which you've probably used Claude or GPT or something else to configure, than you can with the straight connectors. Partially because it's a business model barrier for a lot of the big SaaS platforms out there, that they don't really want you doing leaps and bounds ahead of their own product development. They have to grudgingly give you some access because they recognize that they'll lose a lot of people as customers if they can't do the things that they want to do. But nor are they just going to open up their chest of treasures and be like, oh yeah, do all of the things that we can't do for you and make sure that you don't pay us for our next iteration of our product.
Right. So APIs aside, and these more complex webhook configurations aside, give people a very brief non-technical description of what a connector is as we get into building these workflows.
Connectors are simply it's the connection between one data source and another data source. And
it's
often
supposed to be easy.
and often these are defined, if you were sort of think in terms of left and right, like the coin that's going into the machine and what's coming out of the machine. On the left, it's going to be your triggers. So many things in our daily life are triggered by things that happen in email. Like it's a solicitation, it's an invoice, it's a bill, it's whatever it is. And then what do? You do something with it. You forward it to the accounting team, or you forward it this way, and they do a transformation on top of it, right? So one connector might be the source of information. So something happens in a database, something happens in email, something happens in Slack, something happens in HubSpot, wherever it is. And then you go through the transformation in between, and there may be a connector in there to, say, a data repository. It might be a database. It might be a Google Sheet. And then the destination output on the other side. Again, that could be a data repository. It could be Airtable. It could be G Suite Sheets. It could be any number of things. And then some sort of like a notification connector. So in my world, my nerve center is Slack. So I like to have Slack embedded throughout my process such that I'm not having to bounce around between different environments. So I connect Slack to my workflow such that things are happening in Slack. So just a super simple example is a transcript that's turned into a call transcript that's turned into an outbound follow-up email. There's a lot of stuff that's happening behind the scenes, but it's connecting to Slack such that I can accept or edit right in Slack, as opposed to having to go into some Google document and do the edits and things like that. And then it goes back into its automation out the other direction.
I think that's good. And I think it's worth noting that, so you described all of these different things in the ecosystem. It could be your email client, it could be Slack, it could be your Google Drive, it could be the Google suite of tools like Sheets and Docs. All of those things have log creds for your account. Right. And so the best case scenario with these connectors is that you just put in your log creds and now you're hooked up, right? Once it has access, as far as how robust these connectors are, that's where the options come in. That's where how far open did they peel back the kimono, right? Can I look at all of my documents or just the ones in this folder? Can I have access to all these different things in my email client? Or am I just going to use the trigger of when a new email comes in, right? So when we talk about how robust these connectors are, it's the ease of use of setting it up. Can I just put in my log creds and I'm in? And then how many options, once I'm connected to that tool, do I have to do things with in whatever the workflow or automation is that I want to build?
Okay, so that is a really good point. And this is something that everybody listening should file away, that if you do something like create a workflow within an N8N account that accesses, say, your personal email or your primary business email that does something nifty, and other team members have access to it, they can spin up their own N8 instance that does something as simple as every time new email message that mentions my name, send me a digest of whatever it is. So you just handed your team the keys to your email.
Back to the guardrails, back to the guardrails.
Back to the guardrails, the fun killer stuff.
Fun killer. I was waiting for him to pop up. Here he is.
Yes, Mr. Fun Killer. It's really easy to
stumble
stumble
your
into this
privacy.
stuff. Yes. So forwarding rules and things like that. And there are some basic ways to do it. You mentioned get new as a request in email. For example, if I have a tag, and this is one of the examples we're going to give of an invoice in an email, the only thing that connection can connect to is new email tagged invoice. As long as other people on the team don't have access to change that connection, you're pretty locked down in that case. But the more sensitive the data that you're working with, the more sophisticated the organization, the more guardrails that you're going to need to have in place. If you're a team of 2 or 3 and you're just moving super fast, like there's going to be a lot of informality with this stuff, but I think it's pretty easy to think about the ways that this could go sideways in terms of disclosure, data leakage, et cetera.
Well, as you mentioned, we've been playing with this for a long time, and we have dozens of these that It's to the point now where if these got taken out of my business, I'd be really unhappy. Like, it would be bordering on catastrophic, to be honest. We should talk about some of these workflow automations. I don't even know where to start. I know that you have a recent one that you really like. I want you to talk about it. And instead of me trying to pick my favorite baby, I'm going to then talk about a very simple agentic use case that was a big unlock for me. And I'm hoping that you're just going to look at me and shake your head and be like, yeah, dummy, of course you should have done that. But we'll see if that's true. I'm going to let you go. Tell me about a workflow automation, how you put it together, and the value that it's given you.
Okay, I'm going to talk about two. One that
It's
is
cheating.
too
Cheating. You're just taking all the airtime.
too complicated to go into on like super deep level here, but it's sort of the art of the possible. And again, if you're a SaaS company and you're thinking about like the future of your industry, these are things that you need to keep in mind. And then one that's much more straightforward, because we have a bit of the challenge to the audience is sign up for a low tier or a free N8N account and do a basic automation, whether it's something that's solving something in your personal life that's annoying you or some just basic thing professionally. Obviously, you need to have permissions to be able to do this within your corporate account. So perhaps start on a personal task, but really just want to script out how easy some of these things are to do, because they really are. On the more complicated front, and one thing I do have to say is I'm saying I a lot, but I really have a team of people who have become just ninjas at developing workflows. And I really don't want to steal their thunder because they are having so much fun doing this. I have this great guy named Benson, and Benson got on a call with me just the other day. He's a young guy, and he's like, I just love this. I'm having so much fun building
kind
these
of addicting,
things.
right?
Like, this is what I want to do. And I was like, done. Like, you're great at
it's
this.
Almost one of those things, Kevin, that the more you do it, the more potential that you see there is, right? You start off with something simple, you add a little bit of complexity, and then all of a sudden you have an idea for an entirely new automation that's 10x more complex than the last one you did, but you would have never gotten to that unlock if you didn't start playing with it, right? It does have this really fun, addictive, iterative cycle to it.
And now we're just ideating left, right, and center. So anyway, so when I say I mean we. Like, this is I just wish I could spend like all day playing with these things, but I just can't.
Totally.
Okay, so the one that just blows me away that Benson built for me is I have a little bit of a problem in that I'm sort of our own sales funnel that people come in and we meet them through LinkedIn or events or whatever it is, and they end up on my calendar. Cool, great. I have an open calendar, but often I have no idea who I'm meeting with. So to solve this problem, you want to look and see if there's a buyable solution out there. And we looked at all kinds of solutions, and they were crazy expensive. And none of them would do exactly what I wanted it to do, but it would have been probably $250 a month to stitch together a few different solutions to do what we did, which is look at the calendar. Figure out if this is somebody that you meet with often. Oh, it's Eli. We meet with Eli all the time. You must know who Eli is. It punts that person out because we know them. If it's somebody who you don't meet with, then use what's called Appify, which is another connector layer that we're going to get into at some point here, to look at LinkedIn and look at any direct messages that this person and I have had. So it'll take the last like 6 weeks of messages. Then it will look at email, and it will look at the last 6 email threads. It will put all of that into a RAG database. That's sort of important, not to get complicated, but to lock it in so the information isn't going to drift from there. Then it bounces off into HubSpot and determines whether or not there's any sort of a sales relationship or past history with this person or their organization. And then it puts it all together into this really tight briefing that I get on Slack about 4 hours before the meeting. So I just have this constant flow of meeting prep. And there are people on this call who at various points in their career have had like high-skilled SDRs that spent hours, if not weeks, doing what I just described. And this costs a fraction of a cent to run this thing. And it's just, I would just curl up if I didn't have it anymore. And I want to keep tweaking it and doing other stuff to it, but super, super powerful. So that's sort of the art of the possible if you wanted to build something that's much more complex, but it's doable. And I don't need the $250 $50 a month subscription. I just have my guy Benson.
Can you rattle off? So N8N is essentially the connective tissue for all these different services that are now being turned into an automation. You mentioned Appify, right? There are other tools that you're calling to make this whole process happen, so that when the meat is put through the grinder, the sausage that comes out is just either a Slack message or an email you get before your meeting that acts as this dossier of like, who is this person? Have we ever spoken before? If so, what have our conversations been about? Is there any recent news about this person, social media, whatever it might be, right? What are the tools in that workflow that you're talking to make this happen that are outside of N8N?
N8N itself, and then Appify has what are called actors, which, going back to the beginning of our conversation, are basically agents. So you want to pull information off of YouTube, you want to pull information off of LinkedIn. Obviously, you want to be really careful with access and things like that with these tools, but they generally have a very low per use cost, like, a few pennies to go off and do something, but somebody's perfected that particular piece, and you're plugging that into your system. Then, HubSpot is our CRM.
Very inexpensive, yeah.
Very inexpensive. We are using a low-cost Pinecone setup for the database.
Is that what you're using for the RAG?
We're using Pinecone for the RAG, and the RAG itself is running through GPT-5 to do the vector structures. Again, I don't want to be careful with terminology and scare people away and whatever. Like again, you need a RAG if you want to lock in context such that it comes back in a way that's low or lower hallucination, such that you really want to secure it. So if you're building a chatbot on your site or something like that, your vendor is going to build the RAG such that it's pulling from that information first.
Guardrails.
It's guardrails around it, and it's just higher quality output. We will get beyond that at some point, but at this point, it's pretty click easy to do a lot of this stuff.
And can be faster too, right? Can actually pull information a lot faster than just your off-the-shelf LLM.
And then Slack, well, it connects, though. Another connector is we use Google Workspace, so it's connecting to my Google Calendar, and then Slack is that communications hub. In my world, I know that you loathe Slack, but there are other ways to do this downstream if you're using ClickUp or you're using another tool that where you want it to be displayed. But for my workflow, that makes a ton of sense. And then the logical extension from it would be, okay, I've had my call. My call recorder of choice is something called Spiky. It does a lot of other cool stuff for me, but I get the transcript, and then the transcript should bounce off of all of the information we've already accumulated about the person, such that if I wanted to do a highly tailored sales follow-up, this is already half built. So that's just an agent on an agent that connects these.
Just for the record, I don't loathe Slack. I loathe all real-time chats. I hate the distraction so much. I was just loathing the invoices from Slack after ClickUp offered the same service of Slack, but I was already paying for it. So.
Don't get me wrong.
It was just the money. It was just the money. Okay, cool. So listen, to be clear, you don't need to know exactly how all this stuff works under the hood in order to build these. You don't need to get into vector databases and RAG and have an intimate understanding of how all of that works in order to build some pretty kick-ass automations. So if that is your more complex one, what is a simple one that somebody could run out using N8N and just build today on their lunch break instead of with their 15 amazing AI assistants that you have?
Yeah, and this is challenging since this is we're doing this in audio, so you're going to have to bear with me just a little bit. So something basic that almost every business leader deals with is invoice processing, and I always like to think of terms of ROI, and there's a certain self-loathing or activity-loathing part of ROI. And I really, really, really don't love the fact that I get to be my own CFO and controller and spend, quality Saturday time, like looking over invoices and making sure that everything is accurate and whatnot. So I wanted to come up with a way of just attending to the issues. So knowing when an invoice is, it's out of the norm in some way, shape, or form. And I also wanted to be able to track things in someplace that my bookkeeper would be able to find them, and et cetera, et cetera. So Super simple flow. All this does is it looks for a tag in an email. In this case, it's a transactional email that's tagged with invoice. So yes, I had to go into Gmail and create a tag that would or a filter or a label in Gmail that knew that something was an invoice. So okay, that's outside of this flow. That's still pretty normal. Every time one of those shows up, what I want to happen is I want the PDF that's attached to there to be transformed into something useful. So the trigger is a Gmail connector that has a get message function, and the get message function is looking for label invoice. So every time an email comes in that has that label, and it looks once an hour, once a minute, once a day, however you want to set it, it grabs that email. Then the next thing that has to happen is it has to do something with the attachment. And the attachment is usually a PDF, and a PDF is sort of suboptimal to deal with from a data perspective. So you need to turn the cool visual PDF into uncool data that you can do something with, generally JSON. So there's a next step in there is to extract data. So this is a node in terms of vocabulary. Each of these steps is called a node in N8N, and they do different things. Trigger node is Gmail, and then extract information node is the next one. So now all of the information from the invoice is there, and then we need to do something with this. And this is where the AI magic comes in. So now you're going to have an AI node on top of it that is going to process the information that came out of the invoice in some sort of a logical form. In my case, I want things that are segregated in my invoices in a way that I can better understand them, such that I understand what the line items are. So the logic of the first AI node is to separate all of the pieces. And then the next node is a recording node. In this case, it's just a G Suite or G Sheet node, and it's taking all the information from that invoice that's been extracted and it's putting it in a Google Sheet. Up until now, you could have done, well, except for the interpreting of the invoice, you could have done all of this in 2002. But then I want some logic on top of it that identifies if there's an issue. So I want an AI node, so AI node number 2, that's going to look at the history of data that's in the spreadsheet and let me know if my invoice is, say, 15% over or under what it has been before. It's going to flag those, and then the next node is a notification node in Slack. So I have a accounting channel in Slack, and it's going to flag it there and say, pay attention to this. This is 22% more than it usually is, because those are the things that I want to pay attention to, that for some reason something's gone haywire in billing, and I want my attention drawn to those. And that's super simple to do those pieces. If you want something completely like normal, any homeowner knows that you go to Home Depot and they send you an invoice from your receipt, and you're probably not doing a good job of keeping those little receipts that are accumulating over years. And if you're not, when you sell your house, you're going to take a hit on basis. So super simple version, personal email, tag Home Depot, extract the invoice, transform it into data, and then use an AI step that categorizes that into, is it a consumable? Like, did you buy garden soil, or did you buy something that could be counted against the basis of your house? And
I love that one. I like that better than your accounts payable workflow.
Well, I mean, it solves a problem, right? That,
Totally.
over 10 years in my house.
Nobody keeps track of that shit.
Nobody keeps track of it, right?
No, but it adds up. It's material.
It could be material depending on, where you are in your home value, right? So, but now I never have to think about it again. If I sell this house in 20 years, then I'll have all of that data that's just sort of quietly accumulating in the back.
Jesus, why have I not been doing this?
And I never have to think about it again. So that's the sort of thing that I want you guys, the listeners, to think about. Like, what's something just sort of annoying in your day-to-day world that you can make more sense of? Is it like a kid's sporting calendar that you want to be added to your home calendar? That terrible email that parents get where it's like, there are 22 events that are coming up in the next 4 months,
God.
and they're at these dates and these locations and only occur for the left-handed girl athletes, here. You can fix all of those things by adding an AI interpretation layer on top of it. So a lot of this stuff is super easy. Here we are on one side, we're solving something that could have been its own SaaS company with like that SDR lead prep thing. And on the other, I'm saving myself, I'm saving future me untold pain or untold dollars through this silly Home Depot expense categorizer.
I love that one. And I get more inbound from my kids' schools, by the way, than if somebody took my email and wrote it in the bathroom of like a funnel hacking conference or something. It is just insane, the amount of inbound from the schools, text messages, emails, everything. That might be my next automation, is to figure that out. I think that's a really good one too. Almost as good as Home Depot.
So that's our challenge. Our challenge is go forth, open a free or, again, super cheap N8N account. If you choose to do Zapier or Make or whatever, fine. They have very similar tools. I just personally find N8N to be super easy to use, and there's so much good information out there. Perhaps use the Claude skill that we'll provide in the show notes to set that up in Claude so you can ask it questions about what you're actually trying to accomplish, and just build something. Just commit to building something totally simple and perhaps stupid, and you'll see the potential. And then what happens is you look at your job or you look at the way your organization runs, and you'll want to deconstruct everything.
Yeah,
because
this is a frame shift, right? And the key is start simple, because it is easy to overcomplicate this in the beginning. Kevin and I are famous for this. And then all of a sudden you're like, none of this crap works, right? Start simple, build confidence, and then just start to escalate into bigger problems that you want to solve.
Yep. Yeah. And I hope this is accessible. Again, we do tend to get a little bit technical on this stuff, but it doesn't have to be. And if you start with the easy, low risk stuff that's going to save you or your team a couple hours here and there, just get your juices flowing a little bit, get some reps.
Totally. Well, speaking of non-technical, I've got like the least technical thing you can do. Was such a weird unlock for me. You know how we keep having those moments of we will try something with a tool that we haven't tried before, and then all of a sudden a light bulb goes off and you're like, oh my goodness, this could change everything. Why haven't I been doing this before? And we're going to keep having those moments with AI as this progresses. Undoubtedly, it's just going to keep happening. So a while back, we probably vaguely referenced agentic browsers, right? First, Perplexity came out with one with Comet. Google added a bunch of stuff in Chrome that just it was kind of a nothing burger. Nothing really happened with it. Gemini is now being peppered into different parts of the Google ecosystem. It's actually really helpful in things like Sheets. I kind of can't believe that it was never there, because now I'm just using it all the time. I don't know how I survived without it. And then OpenAI came out with their own browser, Atlas, and we talked about it a little bit. And, Kevin and I were like, oh my goodness, have you downloaded Atlas? Kevin says, oh, it's my default browser now. And then, I don't know, 4 days later, Kevin, you're like, it's no longer my default browser. Actually, use all these Chrome extensions, and it isn't doing this very well. And I don't even know why I need AI in my browser, to be frank. So you kind of went full circle, and very early, let's see what happens, right? Let me describe a use case, and it's easy to get in our own little bubbles and our own little AI workflows and wonder, do other people have these problems? Is it just me? So here's a common problem. Take any piece of relatively convoluted software that you're having to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and you're trying to figure something out about it. Anything. Like, I was having a problem with my AI note taker. We were using Fireflies, and for some reason it was wreaking havoc in our CRM because of some settings. It was creating all these duplicates and random stuff. Couldn't figure it out. And so, I just go, hey, here's this problem I'm having. Tell me how to fix this. What are your recommendations? And it says, oh, okay, first go to the settings. Now go to this. Now go to this. And after step 2, you realize that all the things it's describing don't exist in the UI, right? It just completely made it up. And you say, yeah, that's not there. That doesn't exist. It says, oh, you got me. Yeah, they updated the UI. I'm like, no, they haven't. I've been using this for 5 years. They haven't touched this crusty old product forever. You are making this up. Like, these don't exist in the UI. So what I invariably do is I grab a screenshot and say, this is what I'm dealing with. What's going on? So I see what the problem is now. Click this, and then you'll get to that menu. And then I click it, and I'm like, no, you're wrong again. Still nothing in the UI. So I take another screenshot. So I end up passing these screenshots into my chat over and over and over again. Then I look at my watch, and like 3 hours have gone by where I'm like passing screenshots. My desktop is now filled with screenshots, and I'm still not that much closer to solving my problem. How's this happened to you, where you're passing these screenshots back and forth?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it
Okay.
happened to me just last night that I have
Okay. I
I
feel
have
better.
GPT projects set up for major platforms, and even so, you can do some pretty clever things, by the way, about like creating a like, oh my gosh, I'm rolling my eyes because I don't want to get technical, but creating like a Git repository for like FAQs for a platform, and then calling it Claude Skills, which have come up several times here, will do a better job than just prompting. But who's got time for that?
Back to
So
the Midwit meme, right? Like,
yeah, right, exactly. Like
I'm going to build this whole complex workflow because I can't use this goddamn piece of SaaS that just has an awful user experience, right? And I can't find the settings that do the thing that I want it to do. I had this moment where I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, so I've got Atlas. GPT is in Atlas. It can see my screen. Why am I doing screenshots? Why am I not just having this conversation in the browser? So in this case, it was our CRM. We're using Pipedrive. I was having a hell of a time building out some of these reports because it uses this conditional logic. The UI is awful. And what GPT kept telling me was to, use this condition. I'd go to the drop-down menu. That condition doesn't exist, right? So I'm like, this is what's available. Tell me what to do. I put in the screenshot again. This isn't rocket science. This isn't like a real complex thing to do. It's just one of those time-consuming, pain in the ass tasks to work through that just takes way more time than you ever think it's going to. So I decided to test my idea. I open up the CRM inside of Atlas and I started chatting. I say, hey, this isn't working in this report. Why? Oh, I can see what's going on here. What you need to do is actually build an automation that will then give you the clean data for this report. I'm like, oh, okay. I haven't done that before. I guess I got to figure that out. Let's work through it. And it asks, well, do you want me to do it? I say, sure. Yeah, go ahead and do it. And one of the big promises of these agentic browsers, or just agentic AI in general, is that, like back with Operator, for example, it could take over your screen and it could do these tasks. But the complaint was, A, it didn't do it very well. And B, it was like painfully slow. Like you're watching it do the work and you're thinking to yourself, I could just be doing this 10 times faster. Like, this is a complete waste. So what I did is I let it go through a process that I didn't know how to do. I would have to learn. I'd have to figure out. I'd have to have a conversation. And it just did it. And yeah, it was kind of slow, but it did it and it saved it and it worked. And I had a list of these things that I had to do. So then I did the next one. Then I did the next one. I was at my daughter's gymnastics class. I brought my laptop and I sent Kevin a message. And I pointed my computer. I'm like, yeah, just me taking my daughter to gymnastics while my AI agent is just building these workflows for me in the browser. It was one of those moments, Kevin, where I'm like, yeah, it's a little slow right now, but it's actually working. And what an unlock. Who cares how long it takes if I'm just off doing something else and I have 5 of these browser tabs open doing these tasks concurrently? Like, it was one of those moments for me where I'm like, now I get it. Now I get the promise of this browser. Now I see where this is going. This is huge.
So a big topic for us at various times going forward is going to be just this impact of the agent layer on the internet at large. So if I'm working with a direct-to-consumer company or a company that does a transaction online, be it for a property or an appointment or whatever, there's all of this conversation going on about the metadata that sits behind sites and making it easier for the LLMs to essentially get their talons into things. And what you're describing there, to me, indicates that we're going to need a better layer of how, like, these skills are are placed. So if you're Pipedrive, you want to have a skills package. This doesn't really exist in this format right now. So if Pipedrive's listening, whatever, but you need something there that's like an information packet that's fully up to date, such that the model isn't just making assumptions, because you still have the same problem you did before, or when you were doing the screenshots, that if it doesn't have that refined skill there, it's basically just going off of its training, and it's likely to get confused. But if it instead has an embedded skill that it just basically loads when it goes to the page, it's like, oh, okay, well, this is how I do a Pipedrive automation. So if you're a brand, you need to be watching this space, because that sort of information exchange is going to be part of the future of how humans and agents interact with your environment. And, if you're a consumer and you're using these sites, you should probably be playing with these things as well. So that's, there's a lot there. There's a lot there as far as sort of the future of how we do these things, for sure. But pretty cool.
For me, that tipping point is, it worked, right? It did the thing I wanted to do, and it actually saved me a bunch of time and trouble. That was pretty telling. That was pretty incredible. And this might be a little nerdy, but there is this system window that appears when it's taking over your browser and acting on your behalf, so you can watch it think. Right? You can watch what it's going through. As Kevin said, it's not so sophisticated that it has the instructions. It's just doing what I would have to do without the screenshots and the back and forth with the model. It's just doing that for me, which is pretty incredible. And watching it think, it will say things like, well, the user gave us the log cred, so we want to be careful about, maybe we should ask if we want to save this. And it's going through those processes. Really, really fascinating to just get a behind the scenes look as to how the model's operating, how it's working when it does take over the browser and act on your behalf. Really, really cool. Kevin, we're already at time, and there was something else that I really wanted to get to, and maybe I'll just have to stop recording. It's such pressing news, but that's okay. It is a big conversation though, so maybe a bit of a cliffhanger there, but super fun as usual, buddy. And I really hope everybody takes your challenge and just gets a free or low cost an account and tries something that's been bugging them. Try to make it easier. Try to make it just happen in the background so you don't have to think about it anymore. Get some of that psychic baggage off of your head.
Yep. Give it a go. Break things, get a little frustrated, solve a little problem. Trust me, it's fun.
It is fun. It is fun. Maybe not the first time, but it gets fun. All right, Kevin. Talk soon, bud.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to send us a question to answer on the show, email me at elijah@spark6.com. That is SPARK6.com, or Kevin@ascendlabs.ai. To learn more about AI strategy and training for your business, visit Kevin's company, Ascend AI Labs, at ascendlabs.ai. And to learn more about design and development of custom AI solutions, visit my agency at spark6.com. You can also sign up for my free newsletter, AI Framework Friday, by visiting spark6.com/newsletter.